Hello, this is John from Friends with Medical Benefits. I'm here with my friend Bill. Bill is a two-time colon cancer survivor, and I am a doctor living with Alzheimer's. And we're sharing our journey together as friends who had been apart for 20 years. And last episode, we talked about my diagnosis and things that I felt and how I adapted to having the diagnosis. And this week, we'd like to talk with Bill about his diagnosis of colon cancer and his feelings about being diagnosed with it and the things he did after he found out about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill and let him talk about his initial diagnosis with colon cancer.
Hey, great, John. Thanks for that intro. I think before I start talking about how I responded to the news, I think I want to talk just a little bit about my basic philosophies in life. For as far back as I can remember, I've thought of myself as a realistic optimist. I try to have a positive attitude on things, but I hate when people are all flowery and everything's going to be great when there's no substance behind it. I could be upbeat, but I'm not going to be falsely positive about things. But I also tend to do better with bad news than I do with the unknown. I do very, very badly with not knowing things. But then once I know, I could handle it, even if it's the worst situation. So we made a video a couple months ago called How Barry Kripke and the League Nearly Killed Me. And in that, I talk about what led me to finally getting a colonoscopy. But there's one thing I don't mention in that video, and I'm not going to give the summary of the video because it's an easy watch and talks about how I was inspired to get a colonoscopy because I had a small child when I was 55, when it would have been better to have it at least 5 years earlier, and now 10 years earlier with the new guidelines. But the appointment was made when we were in the middle of COVID. And one of the problems with COVID that came about was medical appointments were extremely hard to get and extremely delayed. You couldn't just get an appointment and be taken somewhere. So I wasn't symptomatic, but I was a little nervous about being 55 and not having a clean bill of health. And so Kristen, who does all of my grunt work for me, got me an appointment for a colonoscopy. But it was way off, a few months away. You couldn't get it soon. And the one thing I didn't talk about and didn't even tell Kristen, I'm not in the habit of keeping secrets, but between the scheduling of the appointment and the actual appointment, I had a couple of bloody stools. Now, I said I'm a realistic optimist, so first thing I'm thinking is, this could be colon cancer. But I'm also thinking, well, it could be hemorrhoids, it could be nothing. But as long as I already have a colonoscopy scheduled, I might as well just go with it. So while I'm sharing this news only with myself, there is that little thought in the back of my mind of, this might show something now that I'm experiencing a symptom. And then we also talked in our podcast about getting a colonoscopy. Previously, you talked about how it's possible to have some memories of the colonoscopy, that you're unaware for the most part during it, but there are some, because you're not knocked out like during surgery. There are some elements to it that you may retain or be aware of. So when I came out of the medication for the colonoscopy, there's a little part inside of me that kind of remembers that they said something about finding cancer during the colonoscopy. It wasn't vivid, it wasn't clear, but there was something in me saying that. And I'm not the kind of person who gets bad thoughts in my mind, like, I'll bet it's the worst. So I'm starting to wonder. And then, because it was COVID, Kristen was supposed to drop me off and stay outside and not come in. They didn't want any family or guests inside with you. And they had made her available to come inside. So I'm getting suspicious between the thoughts that I had of the colonoscopy, the bloody stools that I had, and having my wife come in. So I wasn't shocked when the doctor told me that they found something. Now, the Dr. Andrews, actually makes an appearance in our first video. He has a great bedside manner, a very calm demeanor. And so he was very clear from the beginning that they found something, but he was very reassuring in saying that he thinks it was found early enough. It's not something you could let go for a period of time, but it wasn't like, don't go home and cancel your plans, we're doing the surgery. Today, it was, okay, you want to find a surgeon and schedule a surgery. And I'm confident things will go well if we do this soon. So while I'm getting the shock of the having cancer, it's kind of tempered by the fact that he was reassuring. So, and I knew that, I was kind of preparing for it. And as I've said, the fear of unknown is harder for me than bad news. With bad news, I could formulate a plan and work in my mind. So I was like, okay,
let me
I
ask
have
you,
cancer.
Bill,
Yeah.
when you had that initial colonoscopy, did he tell you at that time you had cancer, or did he say it looks like you have cancer? Was it a pretty much...
He was confident.
He was confident.
He said it was confident.
Okay, because...
He's a good, you don't, two things doctors don't say are 0% and 100%,
Right.
I'm assuming.
I was just wondering how he approached it, because some doctors will say we found something and we're waiting for the biopsies, and some will give you a idea of what they suspect, and it sounds like you got a good general idea that you could expect.
Yeah,
that.
he said it looks like cancer, but he didn't say it definitely is cancer, but he said it looks like cancer, and he didn't say, well, we could definitely get all of this out, but he did say it looked good.
Okay.
And Kristen doesn't have a poker face. She's much shows her emotions much more than I do, and she took it well. And I looking back, she was acting, but she usually can't act that well. So I took a little comfort in knowing, well, if Kristen is taking this well, then I should be taking it well too. But she did a good job of hiding it, I think. But it's another weird thing was, moving forward. But there was a TV show that Kristen and I were watching. I don't know if you ever watched The Good Doctor. You probably not, because doctors don't like doctor shows because you point out all the things they're doing wrong. So I don't know if you watched.
Well, actually, Portia doesn't like watching doctor shows with me because I point out everything they're doing wrong.
Right. That makes sense. But in the near the end of the last season, one of the main characters, actually, she left the show and came back, but found out she had cancer. And so the doctors are her friends, and they're telling her, they do the test. And as she's being broken the news that she has cancer, I'm thinking, wow, I can't imagine what that must be like. And then it was like, wait a minute, I've been through that twice. I somehow disassociated myself. And I think we forget sometimes when we're facing the news just how jaw-dropping it is when we're experiencing it. And then when we see it in other people, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, I went through that very same thing. Mm-hmm. But, as we've talked multiple times, I had the surgery, and the surgery went well, and I didn't need chemo, and it looks like I'm cured, so that's all great. And I don't want to get into too long of a backstory, but I have to talk a little bit about its circumstances before we get to my second diagnosis. We lived in a house that was a great house. Kristen, as a single mom, did an amazing job. She kept the household with 2 children all on her own before I came into the picture. And it was a great house. And then when I moved in, it was nice. But then after having Liam, it suddenly became a house that was just too small for 5 people. Great house for 3 people, possibly 4. But the house, the biggest lacking was storage space, closet space, place to put things. And this is actually leading to something here, because we started looking for a bigger house. And in the meantime, we just had to find places for things. And, everyone has the famous junk drawer. But we kind of had a junk spot in the kitchen because there was just nowhere for papers. And so in between my coffee pot and the refrigerator was mail, bills, papers, just tossed in there. So then getting back to after my first surgery, sorry, I kind of have to go in a winding way to lead up to this, though. But without getting into all the details, I wasn't happy with a couple of aspects of my surgery and treatment after my first cancer. And so Kristen got me enrolled at Sloan Kettering in New York. She's like, well, let's go with the best available places in the country that we have access to, and that was it. And so I got an oncologist from Sloan Kettering, and she was great. And I started getting some testing done. And an issue that you've mentioned several times that always comes up, insurance. Suddenly, I get a notification from my insurance that they are not covering my Sloan Kettering bills. And now I'm owing, because I had a couple of tests and a couple of meetings with my oncologist, thousands of dollars that I now owe Sloan Kettering. Okay. But in the meantime, I'm going back and forth a little bit. My last schedule for a scan, because I didn't like to travel to New York, we had one local. Kristen set up a local scan and blood work for me to do. This is probably around 2021, a year after my surgery. And I go to get it done, and their computer system was down. If I had gone any other day before or after, I would have had my blood work and my scan. But I went on a day, the system is down. Couldn't even make a follow-up appointment because they couldn't put it into the system. So they were like, well, thank you, call us and we'll set up a new appointment. Well, it was after that appointment that I found out that Sloan Kettering wasn't being covered. I'm more than a year removed from cancer and feeling a lot better than I had. And while I'm feeling symptomatic from some things, the cancer was not an issue. And I kind of got lazy on it and just let it go. So this gets us back to the moving into the bigger house now. So we find a bigger house. We're in the process of moving. And Kristen starts going through all of these papers. Most of them are getting thrown out. And she comes up to me holding a paper in her hand, though, and says, why didn't you ever get this blood work done? And I said, well, the system was down the day that I went. And then after that, the insurance started becoming an issue, and I just never got around to it. And she's like, you're going tomorrow to get this blood work done. Because in the meantime, now there's a place where we could get blood work done as a walk-in where we live. So I'm like, okay. So I go after school to get the blood work done, and they can't do it because it was a year and a week old. And they said that the order was good for a year. So that gives you a time frame of how long I went without doing any follow-up or any of this.
So this is now 2 years after your initial surgery.
Yeah, actually, no, yeah, this is actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, this is around 2022 now, yes, in 2022, 2 years after my surgery, not.
Right.
So a year after the blood work that I didn't get done because of the system being down.
Yes.
And I even said, well, what about insurance? She's like, I'll take care of the insurance. Don't worry about it. Just get this blood work done. So I'm like, okay. So she calls and gets me a new order and somehow gets my insurance to cover Sloan Kettering. So I go and get the order. It's on a Tuesday. I go and get my blood work done. I come home from work Wednesday, and Kristen says, you're calling off work Friday. I scheduled you a scan. And this is all a story for another day, but the story behind the story here is the blood work showed that my levels were very high. Okay. And Kristen, she didn't really suspect, she knew. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of the first shorts we made was Kristen reading my results from a blood work at Sloan Kettering, and she showed the high point, and the high point was the blood work that had been done there in 2022.
That's a really good short.
So I get the scan, and here we are. It's metastasized to my liver. Okay. So again, there's the shock.
Okay.
There's the unknown. There's the fear.
Okay.
You look like you want to ask me something.
Yeah, Bill. I want to take you back because you kind of jumped from the first diagnosis, the surgery, to, hey, everything was hunky-dory, and I missed the testing a year later. But let's go back and talk about that 2-year period and some things that people go with. And I want to go closer to the original diagnosis. Things that people go through. I want to find out if you had any of it. Was there any, did you have any anger or self-anger about, hey, I'm upset that I didn't get one at 50 and waited till 55 because now I have cancer and I've got the young child? Did you feel any of that?
It's the timing of that colonoscopy was strange too, again, because had I gotten it earlier, I would have avoided a world of hurt. But had I waited just a little bit longer, I probably would have been, I don't want to throwing out guesses here, but there's a very good chance I would have been stage 4 by the time I got the colonoscopy done, had I not gotten it when I did. Because when I started getting a little bit symptomatic by the time the appointment came, who knows what would have happened. So I tend not to get angry unless there's a specific reason. Had I been a smoker or something that I knew caused it, I don't know why I got it. There's different factors. There's not a family history of colon cancer. There's probably a combination of environmental factors, food, alcohol, who knows. But I didn't have that, and I'm not a denial person.
Okay.
As I've said, when I don't know, that's when my mind is going crazy. But when I get the news, good or bad, that's when it's like, okay, I could deal with this now.
Okay.
So there wasn't denial or regret or anger.
Okay.
Mainly because that's not my personality usually.
No, you're like me, a cup half full, and
Yeah.
some people have relief, and it sounds like you had the relief in the fact that hey, we found it, and I'm going to fight it, and I've got a fighting chance.
And I'm sure that you were an influence as a doctor on your own over the years like this, but the reassurance of Dr. Andrews was a big factor. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because he wasn't panicking. He was very calm and said, well, yes, you have cancer. That's always serious. But I believe we found it in time to correct it with surgery.
Okay. So
that helps.
And no fear of the surgery? Was it, when they prepped you for the surgery and talked about what they would do, was there any concern or fear about the actual surgery?
Human. I'm a human, so of course there's all of this. There's no such thing as a simple surgery or a routine surgery. So even for the smallest of things, there's going to be trepidation, there's going to be fear. So of course I did experience all of that, but I'm not a doom and gloom kind of person. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't worried about dying from the not coming up from the anesthesia or any of that. I felt good, and the fact that the doctor did not think there would be a need for chemo put my mind at ease a lot too.
Okay. And then
and most of the horror stories you hear, and rightly so now that I know, come from chemo, not from surgery.
Yeah. And once again, I'm walking you through a lot of the stuff that people go through. Isolation is another thing, but I know you have your career at that point you were in your career as an English teacher. You probably didn't get a lot of isolation because you were probably still with the kids right up until the surgery. And then how long were you out from school?
Yeah, I had an amazing class that year, or classes. I just loved my students that year. And so in discussing it with them, because I'm a more of a put it out in the open and talk about things kind of guy. So I laid it out to all of my classes, and they were supportive, and that was very helpful. But without getting into too many details, I had a few years earlier, I was in a really bad place in life, not doing well. And I was living alone. So at the age of 50. So being 55 and finding out I had cancer while I have a good family situation, great family situation, I was happier knowing I had cancer at 55 than I was in great health at 50.
Okay.
In fact, you commented about the one photo that's in our video where I looked jacked because I was working out at the gym. Well, I was working out at the gym because I had nothing else to do. But there I was, a model of health and feeling great. And mentally, I was doing better at 55 with cancer than I was at 50, not thinking I had cancer.
Okay.
So yeah, the family support, having a job that you enjoy, does mean all the difference in the world.
Okay. Now, as far as things like, did you do any of the stuff that I had talked about last week? Update wills, do any healthcare proxies, anything like that?
I got kind of cocky.
Okay.
Coming out of the first surgery, I was like, all right, I learned my lesson. I'm going to eat right. Not going to drink alcohol. Going to exercise. Take care of myself. I dodged the bullet. And within a year, I was eating poorly, probably drinking too much alcohol, just not taking care of myself.
Okay. I'm going to let you jump forward to where you played Russian roulette for a year and you took another bullet. So you didn't win that one. So let's go back to now the second episode, and I'll let you go from there because I just wanted to see where we're at during that first episode and after it.
Yeah, I took it. I think I took it well for a few reasons that I've already mentioned, but yeah, family life and then career are definitely influences in that. And so the second time, again, I'm nervous, and I'm, you idiot, you didn't take care of yourself again, you blew it. But my oncologist at Sloan Kettering was, again, feeling pretty good that it was found early. It was a spot on the liver. They couldn't find it anywhere else. And she said the chemo is most likely precautionary. We feel like if we remove a portion of the liver and then we do the chemo for preventative, we think you're going to be fine.
Okay.
And talk about my students as well, too. My students, we have a pretty solid science department at the school where I taught, because every single class said to me, the liver regenerates. Liver can grow back. And it's like, I didn't know that, actually. I said, well, you have better science teachers than I had growing up, because I really didn't know that. So that made me feel better as well, that it's in the one place that could actually heal itself when all is said and done. So going into the surgery, I had, again, the confidence of the professionals putting me at ease, saying, we think, they don't say, well, we got it and you're going to be good, but they did talk about how they feel like the cancer will be removed by the surgery, we'll prevent it with chemo. So I talked a little bit in previous episodes about the bad experience I had with chemo. And I'm not going to delve into all of that now and stick with the life-threatening aspects of it, because my emotional trauma, if you will, came from episodes that happened that weren't life or death. I had a couple of experiences with chemo and with medications and all of that were very bad, but I'll stick now with the actual having the cancer. And so the surgery, they said they thought it was successful. I started chemo treatments, which turned out to be a very bad story and a very bad situation. And it's enough to say that after 3 months, I was no longer getting chemo, and it took me very, very long time to recover from the elements of what happened to me from having the chemo. But through it all, the cancer keeps, now I'm not a fool anymore. I actually did start taking better care of myself. I'm getting the regular checkups, and the scans and blood work keep coming back very well. So I have that good feeling. So I think my second surgery, a lot of my attitude coming out of it was similar to the first, only I followed through on taking better care of myself. But because they said they were confident that they got it all, and the testing that has come has all been good, I don't have that element so much, but I don't like speaking for all people. But I think my attitude now is probably similar to almost all people who have ever had cancer.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's that. You could say you're cancer free, you could say that you're cured, but if you think of, say, you playing the lottery, you're going to play the Powerball. You're not going to win, but there's that part of your brain that's thinking about all the things you're going to do when you win.
Yep.
I know I'm cancer free, but there's still always those moments of when it's going to come back, when it's going to hit. Instead of the good dream of what am I going to do with all of this money when I win the lottery, it's, all right, what am I going to do when it comes back the next time? Because it probably won't be so forgiving the third time. Right. So going into blood work and tests, even though, there's a part of my brain that says, okay, you're good, you're doing everything right. There's always that fear of, when's it going to drop?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I'll talk about a baseball player, Ryne Sandberg. He was a Hall of Fame baseball player for the Chicago Cubs, and he had prostate cancer. And he got treatments for it and was declared cancer-free. And 4 months later, I was on my lunch break at work, just reading some news, And it came back 4 months after being told he was cancer-free, and it was aggressive. And it kind of bummed me out because I'm thinking, that's always what's in the back of my mind. And it didn't look good, and he was saying all the right things. He's going to fight this, and he's going to beat it again. But a couple of months later, he had passed. And that is the scenario, I think, that I hate to say all, so I'll say almost all cancer survivors feel.
Yeah.
You're getting the blood work, you're doing things right, the scans come back great, the blood work comes back great, but you still know you're at a higher risk than the average person.
There's got to be
because it's been
there's
there.
got to be a lot of stress each time you have the test, just making
Yeah.
sure it comes back normal each time.
Yeah.
I know one of our early episodes, one of our show videos is where I come and see your colonoscopy that you had last year, which was,
Right.
I'm glad I could be part of this journey with you. But I'm going to take you back to that surgery again, and the second one, and
Right.
we're going to go through a few things. When we talk about anger, and not anger at the disease, but knowing that you had waited a year to get the testing, did you have any anger at whether it be yourself or the system that blocked you from getting the test?
It's kind of funny because that blood work and scan is very similar to my colonoscopy in that had I got it done earlier, I could have avoided a lot of trouble. But had I not acted when I did, I could have been facing death. So it's I try not to live in the world of regret. Mm-hmm. So of course, part of me is kicking myself, you idiot. Why didn't you get it? Regardless, why didn't you deal with the insurance? Or, of all days to go, had it been any other day, but that one day, I would have had the blood work done a year earlier.
Right.
But when I have information, I like to move forward.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm a reflective person, but I'm not a beat yourself up person. Yeah. So I try to learn from mistakes rather than kicking myself for mistakes.
So you didn't have frustration with a system where you were 5 days over a year from a blood test order and they couldn't draw the blood test?
Yeah, well, but that one I got a couple days later. It was the original blood work that I didn't get done because their system was down, and then I waited a year.
Okay.
So that was my fault.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, you could say, oh, bad luck. Had I gone a day earlier or a day later, it would have been done. Okay. I would have known a year earlier. But I'm not one who lives in all of the regrets and what ifs.
Okay.
I try to take what I have and move forward with it.
All right. We talked about emotional stuff, but how about practical stuff? As a 2-time cancer survivor, did you do anything like healthcare proxies during the process for your, particularly the second procedure? I know the first time you said you were pretty cavalier, but did your approach to the second one, like did you change your, make sure you had a will? Did you do powers of attorney or any of the kind of stuff that I have done? Because I know yours wasn't a terminal diagnosis as mine quasi is. But have you done any of that since the second surgery?
Yeah, that is something that we have done since my second surgery, just to make sure everything is in order if I do pass.
Well, I mean, you had a great family support, and we talk about isolation, and I'll just kind of take our podcast from me. Part of my isolation was finding things that engage me. And this whole journey in social media that you and I are partaking, it engages me every day. And that I'm not saying I'm isolated. I have things I do is making memories. But I did not have things that I routinely was looking at, like us going over what are we doing for a short tonight and that kind of stuff. And this has really helped with my partial sense of isolation. I think we've talked about this. It's really gotten us up and going, and motivation to get you running and get you to the, run for diamonds. And I think, this has been a great part of our healing process with getting diagnosed with our diagnoses.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we both keep talking about how important support is. And I think that what I'm hoping is if some people out there feel like they don't have the support or they're not fortunate enough to have the career or the family situation that we currently have, that we would be there for them and try to help and support them. That it's always helpful to be able to talk things through or have somebody, even if they don't know specifically what you're going through, but can have the empathy to help support you with it. It's very, very important.
Well, I think it was a good talk we had today about your process. I'm going to let you ultimately sign off. And this is Dr. John from Friends with Medical Benefits. Once again, our podcast comes out every 2 weeks, and I'll give it to Bill to sign us out.
Oh, well, thanks. You kind of caught me off guard there a little bit, but I've done that to you enough. But just don't try to go through things alone. I'm not one who always tends to share my feelings because I like to hammer them out before I share them. But of course, this podcast and working with you has kind of forced me to do that a little bit. But if you're out there with whether it doesn't even have to be cancer, just any major illness or issue, don't go it alone. Whether it's professional help or you have family or friends or career, or lean on us if you need to. But we're in this together.